Welcome to the Gospel Liberty Podcast. Thank you for joining us for another episode. In this episode, we're going to be talking about Jesus being the Prince of Peace and nuclear attack, fear, devastation, destruction. It's not going to be depressing. Hopefully, it's encouraging. But it all started when a couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, I was on YouTube and I clicked on a video of someone who is a respectable person talking about the rising possibility of nuclear war due to the conflict that is going on between Russia and Ukraine. And I clicked it, and he had a really helpful video just about the history of nuclear war, nuclear attack. And he pointed me to a movie, a made-for-TV movie in 1983, I believe it was. It was 1983 or 1981, one of those 2 years.
Forget.
And it was called The Day After. And it is the most watched made-for-TV movie of all time, even to this day. It was made in 1983. And basically, it's about a full-scale nuclear war. In this case, it was between the Soviet Union and the United States. And we watched it. And it's not for the faint of heart. It's one of the deepest, most sobering films that I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, not like your standard, flick that you would want to watch, but I mean, it's heavy and it's educational.
Yes.
And helpful.
It gets you to think a lot. And in 1983, when this movie first came out, people were too scared to watch it by themselves, so they would gather in churches and watch it. Ronald Reagan had a private showing before it actually was released on TV, and he said how sobered he was by it. And he actually met with the president of the Soviet Union right after that, and the president of the Soviet Union saw it, and they said, we need to make a pact to never have this happen, to never have a full-scale nuclear war because of the devastation. But what were your general thoughts on the film, first of all? Would you recommend that people watch it? Why or why not? What comments, what counsel would you have for people before they do watch it?
No, I mean, I would definitely encourage people to watch it. I think it's great to expose yourself to certain things, to be educated, and I personally think it's very wise to not just live in like, oh, everything's great land.
Everything will always be incredible.
It's all gonna work out, and everything will be great all the time, and and I just think with the whole within the last few years of shortages here and there of certain things that you need, I think it's good to see this and to think about what might happen. I think us, in America, we live in this bubble and just think that, nothing bad will ever happen because, America is so amazing. And I mean, America is amazing and it's wonderful. And we are extremely thankful to God that we get to live here. But I think that if you're so blind to just what is going on in the world and other things that might come up, and also just, I mean, not to get too political, but I just think when you see how the leader of the country is, and it just doesn't seem like it's going in the right direction. And so I think it's just very, very good and helpful for people to expose themselves to what life would be like, or to prepare yourself, or just to even know what is nuclear attack, what would that be, what are the things that would that consist of. I mean, there's just so many basics that I think would be very, very helpful. Sorry, that was long.
No, that's extremely helpful. Yeah. And it is, if you do watch it, be prepared to be sobered and to be heavy, because it basically, it's set in the early 1980s. And it follows, a couple different stories. I don't want to spoil it for you, but basically, the premise. There's a full-scale nuclear war, obviously, between the United States and the Soviet Union. and it shows kind of what things would be like in the immediate aftermath, and how devastating and how horrible and how challenging things would be, and what exactly it would look like.
Yeah, and I just think like something like this should be like re-brought into the theaters. I think that would be so good, and I just think that people need to kind of wake up.
And and then so many people think, okay, is this fear mongering? Fear mongering meaning, do people just talk about these things to get likes and clicks and views? And certainly, I think that's the case for some people. Fear drives a lot of the news cycle. Fear gets a lot of clicks. It it gets a lot of attention. But also, like you said, people are sinful, and when people who are sinful are in power, which is every single person in power is sinful, but if those people aren't following Christ and aren't being wise, very devastating things can happen and have happened throughout the history of the world. So yes, it is possible that something like this could actually happen. In World War II, for example, an estimated 57 million people died throughout the world. 57 million people. Like that actually happened. You've had other situations, on a smaller scale, but to greater intensity of, entire tribes being wiped out, towns being wiped out. You've had genocide of certain people groups. You've had the Black Death. This obviously wasn't the cause of any specific person, but just mass grand destruction, devastation, catastrophe. The Black Death of the mid-1300s resulted in between 75 million and 200 million people dying around the world, and mostly in Europe.
Yes.
That's 50% of all people in Europe at that time.
Yes.
So that's not just something that, is some fear-mongering thing. That actually happened.
No, like this is true. I mean, we just studied it in school
Yes.
a week ago. Yes.
50% of people in all of Europe died.
Yes.
And imagine what that would do to, if that happened today, for example. If there was an actual real pandemic where 50% of people in America died, what that would do to supply chains, what that would do to, your ability to get water, electricity, what it would do to have your trash taken away, whatever. So these type of things happen. And if you think, well, nuclear war, you're talking about that's something that's just on another level. That's just something on a totally different scale. Nothing like that has ever happened, could ever happen. Well, something like that, except way worse, actually did happen. And I'm talking about the flood. Listen to this passage here from Genesis 7 about the flood, and try to actually put yourself in this situation and remember that this is real. This isn't just some old story or a poem or something. This actually happened to the planet. The Lord did this. Genesis 7, starting in 17, I'm going to read 8 verses. Listen very carefully. The flood continued 40 days on the earth. The waters increased and bore up the ark, and it rose high above the earth. The waters prevailed and increased greatly on the earth, and the ark floated on the face of the waters. And the waters prevailed so mightily on the earth that all the high mountains under the whole heaven were covered. The waters prevailed above the mountains, covering them 15 cubits deep. And all flesh died that moved on the earth, birds, livestock, beasts, all swarming creatures that swarm on the earth, and all mankind. Everything on the dry land in whose nostrils was the breath of life died. He blotted out every living thing that was on the face of the ground, man and animals and creeping things and birds of the heavens. They were blotted out from the earth. Only Noah was left, and those who were with him in the ark, and the waters prevailed on the earth 150 days. Now that is real. That actually happened. I watched a great video from Ken Ham. He was giving a tour to someone at the Creation Museum, if you're not aware of it. Awesome museum, awesome ministry, Answers in Genesis, and he has the Ark Encounter there, a life-size replica. of the ark, and he was giving someone a tour, and he had kind of a model of the ark and kind of some little pictures and replicas of people and the flood coming down. And he was showing them, okay, imagine what this was actually like. Think of the horror as the rain is coming down and you see, okay, it's starting to rain. Oh, it's raining for 2 hours. Wow, this is a heavy rain for 2 hours. And then you start to see the water come up a little more. Oh, now there's a couple inches of water in your yard. Oh, okay, it's been raining 5 hours. Okay, now 10 hours and your yard is like a mini pond. And then it just doesn't stop and it keeps going. Mm-hmm. And then it's seeping into your house. And then you think, okay, I should probably, go to a little bit higher of a place. Oh, now it's up to my knees. Now it's up to my shoulders. I need to go up on this hill. And it just doesn't stop. It's day 3, day 4, day 5. And how are you eating? And the rain's not stopping. And then you keep going higher and higher and the rain's not stopping. And it keeps going higher. And you see people screaming and crying,
like a horror film,
and people drowning.
Yeah.
And this actually happened. This isn't, Ken Ham was talking about how he doesn't like these little children's books about the ark and everybody, smiling and animals are all happy.
2x2,
and
they come on the ark.
Yes, and it's just some fun songs and everything. This was one of the most horrific mass global event in the history of the world, with so much horror and destruction and screaming and crying and people drowning. So I say all that to say, yes, a nuclear war, a full-scale nuclear war would be absolutely horrible. It's not impossible that it could happen at some point, but we don't have to live in fear. That's the other thing. You can watch a movie like The Day After, and you can pray that the Lord would use it to help you to pray harder and harder that something like that would never happen, because it would be so incredibly horrific. But also you can watch it and not be fearful, because as Christians, Romans 8:15 says, we did not receive the spirit of slavery to fall back into fear, but you have received the spirit of adoption as sons, by whom we cry, Abba, Father. That we don't have to live our lives in perpetual fear. We don't have to live our lives in fear of a plague, of another type of natural disaster, of fear of thieves or robbers coming in to break in and steal and kill us, or fear of losing our jobs, or fear of nuclear attack, whatever it is.
Yeah, he's numbered our days. He knows when all of us are going to die, and he knows. And so we can just trust that and go on with our lives and, not be like, oh, whatever, but just, not live in fear.
Amen. We don't have to be flippant about anything, but we also don't have to be scared, because we don't have to fear those who can kill the body but cannot kill the soul. And we know what is coming, which is the resurrection to life for Christians. That even though they can kill the body, they can't kill the soul. And one day our soul will be reunited with our body to live forever in glory. The Apostle Paul said, we just read today in our private worship, Acts 20, he said, I do not account my life of any value, nor as precious to myself, if only I may finish my course in the ministry that I receive from the Lord Jesus, to testify to the gospel of the grace of God. That was the Apostle Paul's purpose, and in one sense, it's our purpose as well, as we are under this great commission to go and make disciples of all nations, and to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it. And there may be setbacks like great war and great famine and plagues and natural disasters, but in the end, Jesus wins. And as we live our lives, and as we go about and share this gospel of the grace of God, we don't have to live our lives in fear. And one day we know that Jesus is going to bring this full and complete peace. And he's slowly but surely bringing it right now as we share this gospel and as we spread this good news. Psalm 46:9, we sung this in family worship a couple days ago. Psalm 46, such a beautiful verse about Jesus, the Prince of Peace. It says, he makes wars cease to the end of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the chariot with fire. One day there will be no war at all. There will be no threat of any type of nuclear war or devastation or destruction. So we can know that in this world, there will be tribulation, there will be trials and difficulties, but yet Jesus has overcome the world. And we can pray for peace right now and work for peace right now. And we can live our lives prepared as well, knowing that challenges do happen.
Yeah, I was just going to say the prepping part, just to be thoughtful about that. I don't know how much you want to get into that or not, but I think that that's huge in all the other things that you listed as well.
Yes, because for being prepared is a way to love people. So if something challenging happened, and imagine, the water supply shut off, for example.
Yeah.
How are you going to love people? Isn't it extremely loving if you have a ton of water to hand out to people? So, or if for some reason we can't get food, but you have a lot of food, don't you have the opportunity to be extremely loving to your family or to others by giving them food or supplies or whatever it is, being helpful to your community?
Yeah, or medical supplies or other goods to think of. Okay, my credit card's not working. So, okay, do I have, cash on hand, or do I have
currencies, gold, silver?
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and do I have batteries,
I mean, not that you're going to be
radio?
shopping much at the store, but, as you, barter with your neighbor.
Right, exactly. So this is important as we think about how we're going to love people and how we're going to love Christ and how we're going to love other people, and not just perpetually think that everything is always going to be wonderful, because it might not. But in the same sense, we don't have to live in fear, and we can fix our eyes to Jesus, the Prince of Peace, and we can live wise lives for his glory, sharing this gospel of grace, testifying to this gospel of the grace of God, and also preparing to love people no matter what situation may come up. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Gospel Liberty Podcast.